Hello and welcome to Fearless DIY Music. My name is Tristan Lass, and today I'd like to talk about 12-string acoustic guitars, their uses, whether you should have one or not for your studio, or utilizing them live or in recording scenarios, or however you choose to use them. So anyway, I just want to apologize up front. I am a little congested. I may be sniffling and snuffling a little bit. I'm on the back end of a pretty nasty case of COVID. But I'm happy to report that I am almost fully recovered and I'm feeling just fine at this point in time. So I'm glad about that. Anyway, I feel like the 12-string acoustic guitar is not something that's really discussed much anymore. And I don't really hear it being used a whole lot in much contemporary music. It definitely had its heyday probably in the 60s and the 70s. But I definitely think that it is an instrument that should never be overlooked. One of my favorite quotes about 12-string acoustics is from David Gilmour. I was watching an interview with him a few weeks ago. It was probably shot sometime in the early 2000s. And he was sitting and strumming on his old 12-string acoustic, and he started playing some of Wish You Were Here, and he's just like, does anything sound better than that? And I think that really captures it. There's a certain magic that these instruments have that should not be overlooked. A lot of people shy away from 12 strings, specifically even acoustics especially, because, it's such a pain to tune them. There are issues with like top stability. This guitar has a JLD bridge doctor in it to hold the top flat. It did begin to taco over the years, and that kind of brings me to, maybe before I go any further with the merits of a 12-string acoustic guitar, how I arrived at this particular 12-string acoustic guitar, which to this day, I think the S12 is still in production from Seagull and, for Godin in Canada, and these are phenomenal instruments. I've had this one since '93. So I've had it for 31 years. I've worn a little tiny hole in the top of it. I used it a lot for coffee house gigs. I've used it on almost every record I've ever recorded. If I need an acoustic 12-string sound, this is the guitar. I see no reason to buy one more expensive, but I definitely see a lot of reasons not to buy one less expensive, which is why I arrived at this instrument. I had an Ibanez Performer 12-string. That was my very first acoustic 12-string, only the second one I've ever owned. And I bought that in probably 1990. And over time, it had those plastic garbage tuners that, those plastic-backed garbage tuners that all import guitars had back then. Ibanez during that time period in the late 80s, early 90s, on their acoustics especially, these were not good instruments. And the tuners were awful. The guitar itself, I managed to get the action low enough. It was playable. It sounded reasonably good. You can kind of get away with a cheaper guitar with a 12-string because the strings chime. It sounds like a 12-string. So anyway, not knowing much, not knowing anything, I was like, I'll buy some tuners for it. So I bought a set of tuners. I get them. Of course, the holes were too small in the headstock of the Ibanez. And I just decided, I'll just get my single speed drill out and I'll find the right size bit and I'll just drill it out. So I started drilling, and I drilled, maybe the first 3 or 4 holes successfully. Then, of course, the bit bound in like the 4th or 5th hole that I was trying to do. It was a single speed drill. There was, no real speed control on it. I did not know what I was doing, and I cracked the headstock right off that guitar. And then, per my last video where I talked about making mistakes, well, anyway, my default setting was to smash that guitar, which I did. And I smashed it to bits, threw it in the dumpster outside my apartment, and went into my apartment, and I had a catalog from a Canadian company that I had ordered through Guitar Player magazine. It was in the back. I used to read Guitar Player from, cover to cover. And there was this Canadian company, and I'd gotten interested in it. And I was like, I'll get their catalog. I would like to upgrade my acoustics at some point. And it sounds like these are North American made guitars. They're cheap. Like the S6 back then was like $299. And this one was like, $399. And I was like, all right, screw it. And I got my credit card out, got on the phone, and I ordered this guitar. and I've had it ever since. And I think that's a testimony to this particular instrument, and to the Seagull Company and Godin for the incredible build quality on these guitars. I mean, this thing looks great. I mean, it's beaten to death, but the frets still have plenty of life in them. I've never had to level them. And like I said, aside from this little hole here and putting the bridge doctor in to get the top to stay, stay in position, this thing's been pretty well flawless for me. Anyway, so why should you have a 12-string acoustic guitar? Well, that sounds pretty darn good. I like, if I have a slower tempo song or something that is, kind of living in cowboy chord territory, or even if it isn't, you can still this guitar bars really nicely, and if you have your 12-string set up right, it will. And, so for anything with big lush chords, with open chords, using this as a backdrop for your song, even if it's not high in the mix, just add something that no synthesizer or, double tracking multiple other guitars or anything like that. There's something that an acoustic 12-string can just bring to your mix that just really fills it out. Any song that I have where I'm like, oh, I think that's going to be an acoustic number. I don't think I'm going to, there may be electric lead on it or some atmospheric guitar. I always consider whether or not I'm going to use this as the primary rhythm guitar, because just having the nice strumming in the background sounds so amazing. But there's another, thing about the 12-string that's great that a lot of people don't think about. If you want to do little single run things, and then, of course, the classic would be like, Gilmore once again with, Wish You Were Here. But single note things sound really great on a 12-string if you're doubling a part, or even just using it as a, an accent. Just little touches like that throughout the mix. Nothing sounds quite like it. And I think that it is something that every serious guitar player and any producer or anybody who's like making music, or specifically, acoustic based music, having a 12-string acoustic laying around is really, really, really important in my mind. I think it adds a flavor that nothing else can replicate. I know there are pedals out there that are meant to replicate it. I know there are plugins meant to replicate it. I know that people don't want to change the strings. They don't want to tune it. But here's the secret. I treat my 12-string the same way that I treat my bass guitars. Once my strings are broken in, unless they have like literal rust on them, or if one breaks, I never change the strings on this. This thing will roll with the same set of strings for many, 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 many years and still sound great and stay in tune and have great stability no matter what. So anyway, really briefly before I conclude this video, I wanted to, and I will wrap up on the instrument itself. I want to thank everybody. The subscriptions have been going up, up, up. A lot of comments have been coming in, which I love. I would love to hear stories about people's old trusty 12-string, or whether they're considering buying a 12-string, and maybe this helps with their decision. But really appreciating the subscriptions. Keep it up. Share with other people if you would for me. That would be fantastic. And if you are a new viewer, please subscribe. It really helps me out, helps out the channel, and we can build a community here. And like I said, I love the comments and I do my best to respond to every comment. I was in a fever dream over the past couple weeks, and I still managed to answer almost every comment that came through, even though I was sick as a dog. And I will continue to do so throughout the course of this channel. So anyway, thank you so much for watching, and consider getting yourself a 12 string. And like I said, I don't know where the S12 lives right now. If I was betting, it can't be more than $500, and I know that you can buy them used for less than that. And if I were to give you advice on what 12 string to buy, as far as an acoustic guitar, this is the one. There's no need to buy a more expensive one. A 12 string kind of just sounds like a 12 string. But if you go lower than this, you run the risks of having crappy tuners, you know, a bad neck or whatever. You know, the kind of crap that you find on every cheap acoustic guitar out there. All right, you take care, and we'll see you next time.